Good morning, Shabbat Shalom. So as I think almost all of you are aware, there's still a lot of tension in Israel politically. And I'm going to summarize the issue for you in essentially one sentence, which I believe to be true. The conflict in Israel internally is largely between what kind of Jew do you get to be versus what kind of Jew do you have to be. Do you, as a Jew in Israel, get to choose how you express your Jewishness? Or do you have to follow someone else's vision, maybe someone you don't agree with, someone who you do not even respect, and ultimately, who gets to defend the country? What kind of Jew do you have to be versus what kind of Jew do you get to be? And I can tell you that the early Zionists were all about what kind do you get to be? Because for 2,000 years, we were told by the rest of the world who we have to be, who we are, how we have to define ourselves, where we can live, how we can live our lives. We were put in ghettos. We were sent to the Pale of Settlement. We were expelled from lands. And we were told this is who you have to be. And our early Zionist ancestors said, enough of who we have to be, it is about who we get to be. And that, to a large extent, is the internal battle that's going on in Israel right now. And that is very much what concerns me. And this Wednesday is Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of Av, where we mourn the destructions of the temple, our exiles, other tragedies of our people. And we often talk about that the reason that the Second Temple in particular was destroyed was because of sinat chinam, because of hatred within the Jewish people toward each other. But I'm going to share a passage with you from Amos Oz, who was a great Israeli writer who passed away in 2018. And he was one of the great voices of Israel, both internally and to the rest of the world. And one of his last books was actually called Dear Zealots. And just to give you some context for Amos Oz, he was born in Jerusalem in 1939 to a very Zionist family, followers of Jabotinsky. He joined a kibbutz as a young man. He served in the conflict with Syria in 1956 and was in a tank in the Golan Heights in both 67 and in 73. This was a man who fought for Israel, both politically, but he put himself in a tank in during the worst of Israel's external threats. And he was very concerned about the direction the country was going. And this book, again, he passed away in 2018. I believe the book came out about 3-4 years before he passed away. And he said, we have been taught since childhood that the earlier iterations of Israel were brought down by internal strife, having collapsed under the weight of sinat chinam, of unjustified hatred. Lately, there are those who insist that if we finally set aside our disagreements and unite as one, we will vanquish the whole world. But the truth is that the uprising against the Romans, which led to the destruction of the Second Temple, just like the earlier war against Babylonia, which had caused the destruction of the First Temple, did not fail because of brotherly strife or unjustified hatred among Jews, but because of nationalist and religious fanaticism, because of the delusions of grandeur suffered by both leaders and subjects who had lost all sense of reality. Even if the Jews of the First and Second Temple eras had loved each other more than David and Jonathan did, even if they had banded together as tightly as a block of concrete or steel, Babylonia and Rome would have still effortlessly crushed the impudent little nation bent on slamming its head against the wall. The destruction of both temples did not stem from unjustified hatred. It was the fault of the zealots who lost all sense of proportion and reality and dragged the people of Israel into a fatal clash with forces infinitely stronger than they were. And if you look at why Judaism actually survived, it wasn't Masada, it was Yavna. Now I'll explain. Masada we celebrated for a while because the zealots said, better to die than to live under the Romans, or that the Romans could be defeated. And they're gone. If every Jew lived like Masada, we wouldn't be here today. Yavna, it was when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to the general Vespasian, someday you will be emperor and we will be your subjects, but just allow us to be ourselves. Allow us to live another day as Jews. If every Jew had been Masada, we aren't here. In fact, the Israeli army doesn't do the ceremonies at Masada anymore of swearing in the new soldiers. It's fanaticism that destroys us. It's not hatred. Hatred is the symptom of the fanaticism. And we have to be very careful that as much as we love Israel, and we will continue to say the prayer for the state of Israel. Sometimes we pray for it, we say the prayer because it reflects Israel, and sometimes it is aspirational for Israel. Fanaticism will end the country because we have proof. It's happened before. We have survived because we have said, what kind of Jew do we get to be in the world? And that's where our creativity comes from. That's where our connection comes from. That's where our flourishing comes from. The minute we say, this is the kind of Jew you have to be, that is the beginning of our decline. There is a rabbinic tradition that someday Tisha B'Av will no longer be a fast, but it will be a feast day. And it will become a feast day when we recognize that the Jewish people is here because Jews have choices in who they are, not because they have to be something under duress, whether it was under the sword in the Middle Ages, whether it was the chief rabbinate of Israel saying that only this kind of Jewish person can get married appropriately. Only this kind of rabbi can perform a divorce or marriage. When Israel becomes the country of get-tos, it will be a feast. But as long as it is a country of have-tos, it will be a fast. I pray someday to feast with you on Tisha B'Av. Shabbat Shalom.